In the last video, we focused on establishing the key facial features and proportions, as well as looking at the lights and darks of our image and creating what we call shadow shapes. In this video, we're going to dive into what we call the articulation process. And this is where we go back into our initial drawing and we refine all of the details. This session is designed to really help you develop your observational skills, as well as refine the drawing, which lays a foundation for the finished drawing to be developed on. And now we're going to move into the second stage of developing the construct. And this is called articulating the construct. And what we're going to do is then go back in and go over the entire drawing. And we're going to micromanage all the minutiae. We are going to make sure that every line is absolutely clear and clean and accurate. All of our shapes are absolutely accurate. Everything is exactly where we want it to be. Basically what we want is to create a drawing that when you're looking back and forth between them, nothing moves, nothing jumps, nothing alters. We want to make sure that this is a really clear and accurate blueprint for the basis of our final drawing to be developed on. When I do this, I like to do it in two stages. I find that if I break it down into the quadrants, the 4 different squares, and I just move and I focus on everything that's in this square, everything that's in this square, I keep moving around sort of clockwise around the drawing, it's easier to manage. I don't bounce all over the place. I work here, there, there, and there. And this is also where I bring out the black mirror and start to use it. And then I go back in and I make sure that every little mark that I want in there is accurate and where I want it to be. So basically it's going back in and just really carefully cleaning up the entire drawing so that it's absolutely accurate. And generally when I go back and I'm articulating the construct, I will spend as much time doing that fine-tuning as I did laying in the initial drawing. Now some students get a little frustrated with that. They think, gee, all this time and energy, I've just put all this work in. But actually going in and doing this is really what's going to teach you how to draw. This is where you're really focusing on accuracy. It's going to really hone your observational skills and really teach you how to really get those fine details in and really micromanage your images, particularly when you're dealing with realism. This is a really, really important skill set to develop. I also like to go back in and make sure that I've gone over my shadow shapes and shadow area, and I make sure that I lay a nice, flat, even tone in those areas. And you do that simply by moving the direction of your pencil. You just move back and forth in different directions. Eventually you lay in a flat, even tone, and that in itself is a very important skill set. Getting used to handling your pencil, getting used to the weight, and also the kind of control. So even at this stage of the game, you're really honing your skills. A properly finished construct will look like this. So what we're looking for are clean, solid, accurate lines, very accurate shapes, and when you're looking back and forth with your black mirror, nothing should be jumping or moving. So when you look here, you look back there, this line here doesn't jump back and forth, shapes don't jump up and down, nothing moves. It basically looks like just the simplified version of what you have here. So that's when you know your construct is finished, is when it's clean, it's simplified, shapes are absolutely accurate, and nothing jumps around. Okay, so I start with the upper left-hand quadrant, and I'm working on that upper part of her face and the scarf. And you can see that I'm going back in and I'm measuring and remeasuring, and I'm taking the time to really cleanly and clearly articulate each of these lines. I'm measuring and double measuring. I'm making sure that everything is the right size, it's the right height, it's all the right angles, and I'm cleaning up those lines on a micro level. And because I'm so focused on just one small area of the drawing, it's easy to see any small deviations or mistakes that need to be corrected. I have the luxury of focusing in on a very specific area and seeing how everything relates to everything else. All the information's already there, so now I have the luxury of being able to just micromanage small little changes. I reworked the angle of the scarf, not only on the forehead, but also on top of the head, and then measured out the small little ridges where the folds of the fabric were. And now I'm working on the angles of her eyebrow, not only as it comes out, but as it moves in towards the eye as well. And I'm really paying attention to the absolute shape of that eye. It's not an almond, it's actually more of a rectangular shape, but I'm going in and really taking care of that shape and making sure that I can have clean, simple shapes in order to articulate that particular feature. I'm also not worried about the details of the eye. I'm not looking at the nuances in the iris or any of those things, eyelashes, eyebrows, or anything. I'm just creating very simple but accurate shapes, focusing on just that small area of her face in order to really fine-tune and zero all of my energy into that particular grouping of shapes. When I'm happy with my articulation, then I go in and I lay a flat, even tone in order to separate my lights and my darks. Also making sure that my lines are clean and clear and accurate so that this image can be easily transferred over onto another surface. As I move over into the upper right-hand quadrant, I then go back in and just continue the same process, double checking my measurements and just cleaning up my shapes so that they're clean, they're very graphic, and they can be very easily transferred over onto another surface. I double check all of my angles, and I do the same thing with the right-hand eye that I did with the other one. I just clean it up, make sure that it's very simplified, and I don't get caught up in any details at the moment. I'm also careful to go and remeasure and work with the pattern that's in the scarf right up to the top of her head. And one of the things that I notice about that is you really have to look at the angles and measure and remeasure those angles. It's very easy to assume that fabric is moving in a certain way and get those angles wrong. So I took the time to really make sure that those angles were accurate. And then of course going in and laying a flat, even tone as well. Once again, I'm careful to really check the angle of the eyes and all those small nuances of shape that go into making that interior eye. And keep those shapes very simple, and then reinforce that simplicity by breaking down my lights and my darks with a flat, even tone. As I move into the lower right-hand quadrant, there's not a lot of detail to take care of really. So I'm just making sure that the shape of the ear is easy to see, so when I transfer it, it doesn't get lost in the shadow area. And I'm reworking the shape of the earring. I also clean up and fill in the flat, even tone in the bottom part of the scarf, and just generally make sure that that whole area, the shape of the jaw, the angles that it's on, the shape of the collar, everything is accurate, and I'm happy, and it's also well articulated and easy to see.
I'm revisiting some of the shapes in the scarf above, noticing that some of the angles are off. And I notice this when I'm stepping back and looking at the image from a distance. So you can't always see these things when you're right up close. So I step back, and then some of these things become obvious. I step back in and I'm able to make the corrections easily and accurately. I continue laying my flat even tone through the bottom part of the scarf so that those delineations of those delicate shapes are easy to see when I do my transfer. I double and triple check all of the angles in the jaw and in the collar area and make sure there's a clean line around my shapes for ease of transfer. You can see how all the changes I'm making are really quite minor. They're just little subtle differences. But on a collective level throughout the entire image, when you go around and do this articulation, it actually makes a huge difference. And it makes a real difference when you begin the final drawing. Now I'm coming down the home stretch of my final quadrant, and there's quite a bit of information in that area that actually is really important as to the likeness of her face. So I'm taking the time to really micromanage this, checking all of my measurements, checking my angles, making subtle changes, and making sure that my lines are really clean and really accurate. Going in and working on the shapes of the mouth is similar to the shapes in the eyes, as in these really subtle differences do make a difference in terms of capturing the likeness. So it's worth really looking at the angle of the upper lip, the highlight on the bottom lip, and of course the curve of the upper lip as it's just below the nose, double checking my spaces between the nose and the upper lip, and the angle of the far side of the cheek, the angles surrounding the chin as well. I clarify the shadow shape under the nose and make sure that it's also accurate, as well as the curve of the nostril. A few last minor changes on the outer boundary on the left-hand side of her cheek and also down into the angles of the chin. Being able to focus just on that one small area at a time allows me to really focus in on those details and achieve the accuracy that I'm looking for. So there we have it, a clean, correct, finished construct ready to be transferred in order to start the finished drawing.
Congratulations! You've now mastered the skills of how to establish proper proportions and shapes, how to identify and mark key facial landmarks, also how to separate your lights and darks into shadow shapes, as well as the articulation process where you're developing your observational skills and refining your initial drawing to a very accurate blueprint in which to develop the final drawing with. As you continue to develop your observational skills, remember that every stroke brings you that much closer to developing the skills to create beautiful and realistic portraits. So if you're eager to take your artistry to the next level and explore more advanced techniques, I encourage you to visit my Patreon site. There you'll find exclusive content and tutorials designed to take you step by step and incrementally up through the ladder of mastery. I'd also love for you to share any specific portrait drawing topics you'd like me to cover in any future videos. Your feedback really helps me to shape the content that better serves your learning process. There's a link to a very quick survey in the comments below. It's only 6 questions and it'll take you a minute to complete. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. I do read my comments and I will make an effort to get back to people as best I can. And don't forget to hit the subscribe and like button for more transformational art videos. Thanks very much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.